All right, well, welcome to orchestral recording at Abbey Road for Lord of the Rings, War in the North. It looks to be about that time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So I think introductions are in order. I'm Craig Duman. I was the audio lead for War in the North. A little bit of background on me. I started in the gaming industry back in 1995. I had the opportunity to start at Interplay. I worked with Charles Deanan. I was there for about 8 years, about 75 games later. Moved on to Shiny, worked at Rockstar, and of course that led me, my initial workings with Interplay led me to move to Seattle, which with Snowblind, and kind of to wrap that and tie that back into how I met Inon. And with that, I think let Inon say some words.
Hi, and thanks, everybody. This is not Alex Brandon, by the way. It's really me. My name is deal. Exactly the real deal. Yeah. My name is Inon Zur, and I started as a tank commander in the Israeli army. That's actually really is. And since then, I'm composing music for computer games.
Hi, I'm John Kurlander. I'm a recording engineer, and I used to. I did about 30 years in the music business based at Abbey Road in London. And then in '95, I moved to Los Angeles, basically to get into the film music business. So did a lot of films. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, actually through Russell Brower and Blizzard, I got an introduction to doing video games. So now I do a mixture of like music, film and video games.
Very good. So this project is all about live recording, and kind of one of the things that we want to help you answer is is going live going to be good for your project? Is it good for my project? Is it good for yours? Does it fit your budget? And if the answer is yes, well, how do we go about doing that? And so that's one of the some of the key questions that we really want to answer for you and empower you to be able to make that determination, if that is right for you. So kind of one of the first things we wanted to assess was our music needs. And, we realized we wanted an epic movie-like score that fit within the Peter Jackson's universe, but we wanted it to be unique to our universe. And we also knew that we wanted a very high production value to match the quality of the movies. And from there, where the next logical question was where do we go? And so I think one of a good thing that we want to do is kind of make this an interactive and play a lot of music for you throughout this.
Well, again, I mean, and the point was when we were asking, like, is it even good for us to go live? I mean, many games just don't necessarily need live music, and as producers, audio directors, audio designers, you should know it. I mean, the fact that it sounds great, hey, we recorded at Abbey Road, doesn't really mean anything unless it really is essential for your project to do that. I mean, if, for example, on the Fallout games that I didn't record anything, or maybe like a string quartet. Some other games I just did sweetening. For this specific game, we've decided, because of the nature of the game, and we would never actually, I'm going to play for you actually a cue that is, how should we say it? It's not the boomy cue, but actually those softer cues are what differentiate a good, even a good MIDI mock-up and a live orchestra. It's hard to do it with MIDI. I'll pay him a lot of money.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. So, the mission was to create a feeling that you were in Middle-earth, but in places that you had never been before. One of the, this game took us to locations that were mentioned in the lore and throughout the books, but had never been portrayed in the movie. So it was, original music. Although we wanted it to sound big and epic like the movies, what we had to work with was licensed music. Really, we just didn't think that it could take us to these new locations.
And, just to add, there is a man, his name is Bob Rice. I'm sure he's probably somewhere here. And one time he told me, what is the difference between music for film and music for games? And I said, no, there's no difference. But he said, yes, it is. Because music for film or TV, you sit back and watch hour or two of movie and listen to the music. With video games, you lean forward and listen for maybe 100 hours of active music. So this was exactly what made us decide not to go with Shore's score, which is amazing score for the film. But when we started pacing them with the game, it just didn't move the game as much as we wanted, because it was tailor-made to the film. And for game, the music has to have a total different nature. It should be adaptive. It should really move you toward where we want you to take, other than, just basically go wherever the music wants to go. So this is the decision.
Absolutely. So you want to play some more tracks here, or kind of go through some shots here? These are just some of the pictures from the recording session. Inon's up there conducting. Different shot.
One of the things, John will switch right now to number one, and we'll play another example, is the fact that although it is a game, there is also a movie part, and this was actually the second reason why we really wanted to record live orchestra and in Abbey Road, because we needed this film quality. So here's one of the cinematics we did.
You should have fled Middle-earth with the rest of your cowardly kin while you still had the chance.
We flee from nothing, least of all you, lackey of Sauron.
Fools! I am the right hand of Sauron. I will see your precious Rivendell burning and your mongrel father hauled before me in chains.
You will do nothing. Your plots end here.
My work is only just beginning. Do you think you two alone can hope to stop me?
They are not alone.
Don't look for your guards. They won't be coming.
Fornost means nothing. You haven't won anything here.
He's escaping. We cannot hope to follow him now.
But I can. Sorcery of Sauron! This is no natural storm! I can no longer see him!
Thank you.
All right. So thank you. So now we're getting to going. Well, let's. We know we want to go live. At this point we've made that decision. Yet we still haven't. At this point, we haven't made our decision where to go, and so we start evaluating the differences between the orchestras and the differences between the venues. And I got to say, Inon was very instrumental in helping us decide that. Because of his experience with recording in so many places and he sent me a lot of cues.
Yeah, it's always good to basically compare between venues. And again, it all depends on your project. Because, for example, when I did the music for Crisis, I needed a small and tight venue for 40-piece orchestra because, Abbey Road, for example, would never work for Crisis because the music has to be very tight and it has to be really lined up with all the MIDI and all the percussions and everything. So we don't need that huge reverb, natural reverb that we have, at Abbey Road, for example. So again, it is a matter of budget, but not only. As a composer, audio designer, audio director, and even a producer, you should get a little bit and research a little bit into this, like how, these rooms, how do they sound? Get recordings, compare, and see what is exactly good and fit for your project.
Absolutely, because what's right for one project might not be right for another. In our case, our ultimate choice was obviously Abbey Road, and there was a lot of good tie-ins with that. It was the right room for the right project. And, so with that, I think we want to kind of shift gears into getting into, what I call is, it's the little things that add up. So it's like we're at this point where we've gone, well, yeah, we want to record live, but what's it going to take to get us there? We knew we had the budget, but we knew, we really wanted to break it down. And I would certainly encourage you to over-prepare for something along this scale. And, like some of the early questions were, how many minutes of music to record? And when we first started, we didn't know that answer because we didn't have all the input sources. And so one of the things that we did early on was create like an Excel budget calculator. And with that, we started going through and, inputting, a variety of different numbers in. What would it, how much would it cost with a 60-piece orchestra with, 2 days of recording? Or, what if it was 90? What if it was 50? We started tweaking all these parameters to kind of fall into that number. And I think, John, Inon probably want to say some things about the size.
Well, we ended up, actually, we had 2 7-hour sessions, so like 14 hours of recording to put in 90 minutes of music. So when you work that out with the tea breaks that happen in London.
Had to have it.
Yeah, that is, it's 6.5 minutes an hour, which, by any standard is going pretty fast. Now, we're not going to draw too many comparisons to this and the movies, but the staggering figure that we did on the movies was actually 1.6 minutes an hour, which I think actually took the world record for being the slowest ever. So, but going from that 6.5 minutes an hour is fast. And then we did a choir session as well.
Yeah, of course. But, again, what we want to really try to advise here and we're talking to composers, to audio directors, to game producers, anybody who has to deal, and you always have to deal with audio because audio is kind of important. So the decision of what to record and what not to record is extremely important. Do not leave it to your composer to decide only, hey, you just take it, you think what. No, that's a mistake. Because an audio director actually knows better than the composer what's going to be played more, what is more important, what it is more exposed in the game. So you say, well, listen, maybe you don't really like the cue that you wrote here and you like the one with the French horn much better. But hey, you're going to hear this cue about 100 times and this French horn thing will be one time in the game. So maybe no. So this is really, really important decision. So, I know pretty much how many minutes I could do per hour. And then I told Craig, well, give me a list of what you think, what's your wish list, basically, of what you want to record. Then he basically put all the ones that he didn't think we need to record aside, and all the rest of them is like, well, it would have been great if at least we could record those. So this is a good way to go about it, to plan.
All right, absolutely. And I think a key point I want to iterate is the things that you choose to do are just as important as the things that you choose not to do. And that, I think, expands beyond the music, but I think that can help you, stay on time, on budget, and, ship the game.
One of the things that I wanted to chirp in is, a lot of people that I know can spend a lot of time, very exacting time, trying to get a 70, 80-piece orchestra to play so metronomically. And they'll just go over and over and then have to break it down into sections so that it's so on the beat. And one of the decisions that can be made is if you need it to sound so metronomic, then just leave that and do it as a MIDI track, and better use the time, the resources to make it sound like an orchestra when you need it to sound like an orchestra.
Absolutely, it's playing to your strengths. And I think that has come up in a couple talks this week, and I think that's a really important distinction to make, is, do the things that you know that you can do great, and, play to those, play to your strengths. With that, why don't we kind of shift a little bit. We've kind of gone into amount of music recorded per day, 6.5 minutes an hour. Number of studio days, in our case, we needed 2 days. Some of the things that you're obviously going to have to factor in and go into your equation is, what's the studio cost per day? I mean, these pretty standard things, but, it's like the little things that add up. And, you forget one key thing, whoa, you don't want it to be painful. All of a sudden you can't record the things that you thought that you could. Some of the factors, engineering, producer cost per day. Another good thing, especially if an audio director has never gone live and done an orchestra, is the orchestration fees. It's just like you can't just take the MIDI file and take it to the orchestra. And I think Inon could probably talk a little bit more in detail on that.
Well, again, this is part of the equation, and and you as a composer has to have like this matrix that will say, all right, in order to cover this thing, I need to know exactly how much each thing is costing, and then add another 15% to it because the planned will always happen. So you have to be prepared for it. So I always leave a cushion of about 10% up, and then pocket it. No.
Inon?
We'll talk a little bit later. Anyways, one of the things, for example, that Craig mentioned here was producer. We have our producer actually here, sitting here, Safrinde, if you could, very and this is actually an amazing functionality when recording live, and I will never go without a producer, a music producer, because when I'm in the booth, when I'm conducting, okay, and there is engineer in the booth, I'm busy conducting, and I am in the recording room. There is no way I could hear everything, and I'm really getting excited also. And John is busy doing whatever he's doing, and which I never really know.
I'm just sitting there.
You don't want to know what I'm doing.
And Craig is like chewing on his nails, and somebody need to say, all right, guys, good enough, next. Or, Inon, this is really not good enough, and the French horn there suck. And just make sure, by the way, that your producer is always talking only to you and not to the orchestra, because that could be really dangerous. I had something with a flute player one time. I don't want to get into it, but it wasn't my fault. She was wrong.
Absolutely.
But anyways, a producer is whoever actually is managing the whole session. He will tell you exactly when to move on. He will tell you if this recording is good enough. He will decide if the first part of the cue was good, and then for the other take, the second part of the cue was take, and then he could edit it, in a good way. So in order to move fast, 6.5 minutes of music in an hour, you not only need that to have like a great orchestra. You have to have a great producer. You have to have great Pro Tools
Great Pro Tools
operator
Yeah.
that when you'll say, okay, measure 30, and then he'll say 6. When I said, like in London, for example, I want to go measure 36, it was there.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically that fast. Only this way you could really move fast.
It was very quick, and I mean, we didn't even, many times we didn't even play the cues back because it was, it was like, well, that was good. We got the take. Let's move on. Next.
I'd have to say though that when Inon was saying that the main reason for really needing a producer is because Inon himself was conducting this, and of course there are a lot of times when the composer does choose not to conduct. And in those circumstances, a lot of time the composer will sit in the booth and be the role of the producer.
Absolutely.
What's agent fee? I mean, anything I don't know here?
Agent fees? What's a fixer?
Bob, are you here? Never mind.
That was that arrangement that I had for the extra 10%. Real quickly, and before we move on, I mean, can you explain kind of what of a fixer? Because that was something that was new to me. And I don't even know if I could explain it, having even been through it, but what is a fixer? I mean, could you answer that?
It's just lost in translation, basically. I mean, it's the English version for contractor.
Contractor.
There's no difference other than the language we use.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Amazing how it slips by you.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, once everything was recorded, I mean, we went through the standard mixing, mastering, account for that. Account for the time necessary to edit the takes all together before you go to mixing, and make some mixing decision costs. Do you want to go flat rate? Do you want to go per day? How that all those things plays into play. Obviously, also plan on spending a lot of time sequencing and the soundtrack and picking which cues, because we recorded a lot of cues, but not every cue we recorded is on the soundtrack. So that took a lot of, hard decisions going through. It's like, which ones, like I said, the ones that make it, the things that you choose to do are just as important as the things that you choose not to do. And not everything went on the soundtrack, and that was a very conscious decision. And it just takes a lot of time. It took a lot of time. I think we've kind of covered this, pulling the trigger. Yeah, we want to go live, but where do we go? So we did go to Abbey Road. But why did we go to Abbey Road? Why not go to Abbey Road? Again, connection with the Lord of the Rings, keeping up the same high production quality. It was a secure feeling just knowing that the audio would come out the way it did. We knew it would be top notch. Everybody there was such a professional. And, another thing that I think is important to include in your equation, if you say, is marketing, and understand marketing's impact. And a lot of times it's important to give them the opportunity to tell a good story. And I think with Abbey Road, especially with the tie-ins with the movies, I think it gave them a lot of good opportunities. And we'll get into that later on in the presentation. But kind of moving on, I think we're doing pretty good on time. But at this point, it's time to get to work. And, some of the things that we did early on to prepare, you've heard this all probably a million times, so it's going to be 1,000,001. But, get your composer involved early. The earlier, the better. And we started working with MIDI tracks, and we started implementing things, which made the implementation of the final recorded tracks a lot better because it's already in there. It also allowed us to calculate disk space and bandwidth and streaming issues by using the MIDI tracks. We did a lot of collaboration. Some of the things that I sent Inon early on was concept art, and I'll spend just a minute on that. Is we had a really neat collaboration where I would send Inon the concept art, and he would craft up a piece of music, and then I would take that piece of music and give it to our concept artist, and then he would continue to refine the levels and concept pieces while listening to what would ultimately be playing back, and that was inspirational for him, which I think inspired Inon. Another thing that I think, and this came up in yesterday's talk, is the ambiances, and I sent because simultaneously with working with the concept art, we would make concept ambiances and say, here's kind of what we're thinking of. Play to this, listen to it. This is what's going to be playing in accompaniment to your music. And I think that helped create a very immersive, seamless, transitions between one and the other. I kind of wanted them all to be, to kind of be one.
Well, again, our achievement will be if the player is not going to turn down the volume of the music or sound effects or both, on the game console. Now, if you are in the middle of some kind of volcano and there's lots of rumbling stuff, you really don't want to write a lot of low pads because that's going to suck. And so you want to think about ways how to describe, but it is dark, right? And it is scary. And we know that dark and scary is low pads. Well, no, not always. And we need to be creative and to find way to create an atmosphere taking into consideration the ambience. And this is one of the so important thing when you're a composer. Always ask your audio director to send you the ambiences in this place that you're writing the music for if you want your music to be heard.
Absolutely. So now once we're getting into work, this is important. So inner legal department. You definitely want to get them involved early. And I just want to point out that U.S. laws and international laws are different. Not everywhere is California. And allow yourself plenty of time to get through. And, because just like in negotiations, there's legal negotiations, and you've got to allow yourself time to have those play out to their full fruition. Things get, signed, people don't agree. You just want to get people all on the same page. And, what's important is, you don't have, even if you're in negotiations, until you have a signed contract and fully executed document, you don't have a business deal. You can't close a house like that. You just can't, buy a house and move in. It's got to be fully executed. It's the same thing with the music. Get them involved early. So my catchphrase is, it's just never too early to have an attorney. So at this point, once, things are moving along, it moved pretty quickly. We were going, we're thinking about recording at Abbey Road Studios. And marketing was like, really? Within like 2 days, it went from we're thinking of recording at Abbey Road to, wow, we're recording at Abbey Road. And the whole company knew it, and people are coming up to me that I never even spoke to, and they're like, wow, how exciting. And so, marketing is a very powerful engine, and from giving them a good story to tell, they did on the collector's edition, they flew out with cameras and crew and people and filmed a behind the music for the collector's edition. Also getting them involved early also allowed the E3 orchestra to take place, and perhaps Inon could probably talk a little bit about that, because that was something unique.
Again, we really, as a composers, we like to be really aware of what's going on around us. And we can contribute to the product way above and beyond the actual score that we're writing if we're active enough. And when we're composing a score for a game, we really want to make sure that it gets all the attention that the product needs, and everything that can help to sell the product is a great benefit for everybody. And this is a collaboration from beginning to end. So you're collaborating on the creation of it, and you're also collaborating on the way it's being output and outside and sold and spread out, and anything you can to put the word out about this product.
Absolutely, and definitely include multiple streams of income. Any way that you can possibly think to leverage the investment in the music. In our case, we did the game soundtrack. I think that's kind of a given in these days, but not everybody does it, and so I certainly encourage everybody to do that. Key element. I think we've kind of gone over this. We just gave them a good story to tell. Some of the marketing things that they brought to the table, they obviously brought in a whole film crew from Los Angeles and flew everybody out there. They brought in press. They brought in photographers. They scheduled interviews with a lot of the London papers and magazines and game reviewers from there, and obviously the soundtrack. So now we're preparing for the session, and in many ways we've covered some of these things. Obviously, select which cues to record. You can't record them all. Orchestrating the score for live musicians, and which is different. We talked about that a little bit. We got the selected dates. Then we got down to, well, there's 4 orchestras in London.
And they're all great, seriously. I mean, I kid you not. Should I choose a Rolls-Royce, Mercedes, Bentley? It's just like, they're all really, really great. So it's more about who is willing to do it a little bit in a better price, who is even available, who is not on tour. Try to find it as soon as you can, right when you get the okay. Don't wait. This is the key word. You want to hold always the possibility of changing things. So first, book stuff. Make sure that you have a date. Make sure that you have an orchestra. Make sure that you have a contractor for the orchestra, that everything is set. God forbid something happen, you can always change. But if you get us like, oh, actually, it's a month. Let's do the book the orchestra. No, it just doesn't work this way.
Yeah, I think we did change the dates at least a couple, at least 1 or 2 times, and but it got the ball rolling. It lets people know you're serious, and
right.
It's like get the ball rolling early as possible. So here we are. We're going to London, and woo! And it actually turned out to be absolutely beautiful. It was. These are the pictures. It was blue sky, and I've heard that it's quite gray in many cases.
We had a good week.
We had a great week. Certainly this is maybe a little bit time to kind of let your hair down, start traveling. Travel with the team. It's that camaraderie between one another that gets things done. Certainly, if you're going overseas, or I'd say even here in the States, go a few days early. You don't want to be showing up at the session just too tired. And if any possible way, especially going overseas, fly first class. Sleep on the way there. Celebrate early and often. Travel with your team. Hey, there's Kim. Thank you, Kim. Here we are. We're just kind of touring. Going early, it allows you to kind of decompress and enjoy the moment. Sleep on the way there, like I said, and very important.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. These are stretch out beds.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Air New Zealand.
Air New Zealand. And of course, this is our wrap photo, but we did go out and have a few beers, just like GC. Imagine that. But one of the most important things, don't forget your 80 pounds of sheet music, because you don't want to be at the printer at Kinko's printing out 80 pounds of sheet music.
And I've been there too many times. You really don't want to, I have a CD here with all the finale files. I'll just go there. Why do I have to carry? And believe me, this is freaking heavy. I think we had a luggage and a half being charged to Warner Brothers Studios twice of just sheet music for the players. Parts and scores and everything. You want to take it all with you and hold it very close, because, starting to go and print parts and do this, you do not want to do it 2 or 1 day before the session.
All right, and it did pay off, because we got there and we ordered a couple of recording cues, and having that right there, right then, we just sat down in Inon's room and moved things around, made sure it was absolutely flawless, and moved on. And then we moved on to the session setup, and I think, John, you want to say some things about the session?
Give us some of your secrets.
Yes.
Well, I was going to, there's a different way that I'd approach doing a film score to a video game score. Slightly because of the way it's going to be used and way it's going to be listened. It's not so theatrical. And I decided that there was just one. I was going to do it a little bit different to the film, but there was one element that I decided. If you can move on the picture to the.
Sure,
there
absolutely.
You go.
There we are.
Okay.
Here we are.
So you'll see just behind me, you see a couple of giant, what looked like RCA ribbon mics, 44s. And the story behind that is what I call the Elder Scrolls story. When we did the very first sessions for Lord of the Rings, those mics were originally just placed behind the podium randomly because I was going to have them as a spare for a violin solo and a cello solo that was coming up. And literally about 1 minute before the downbeat of the first session of the first film, Howard called me to the podium and he said, I'd like this score to sound like it was composed thousands of years ago and that the manuscripts were rolled up into scrolls and buried in a treasure chest like hundreds of feet below the surface. And that just recently this treasure chest and these manuscripts were excavated and they were read and they were passed on to the copiers and the musicians, and that's how the score needs to sound.
Thank
and I
you.
go, yeah. What about these ribbon mics?
Absolutely.
So I kind of positioned them as a say, wide stereo pair, and they ended up actually making. I know those are into technical recording, but they sound much more like warm in the lower middle than most modern mics. And when we mixed them in a little bit with the other elements, the more conventional elements, it did in fact make a difference that, you know, I hoped would convince Howard was an ancient manuscript sound. So when we kind of came to do Inon's score, I thought, I really did not want to repeat the film setup. I'd done that and been there, and it was enough. But I thought we'll keep the ribbons, and that'll be the contribution, my contribution to this is the Lord of the Rings sound, on top of obviously all the wonderful composition and orchestration that Inon did. So we're in the studio now. You can see, I mean, we didn't have any live percussion on this. It's just what you see there is set up for strings, woodwind, a big brass section, and also you can see at the back of the woodwinds it's already set up for choir, simply because we were moving so fast we didn't really have time to break it down. And it was a relatively small choir anyway. So that's the setup. Now, an interesting thing is, like, it's all pretty much kept away from the perimeter of the walls. It's not really crowded. And one of the things that you should know is, with the best will in the world, practically every studio everywhere will overstate the capacity by probably about 15%. So, you know, if they say this studio will hold 80 musicians, it's probably better not to put more than 60 in there. Simply because although it will technically hold 80 musicians, it will sound better. You'll get more air around the instruments, and it just feels more comfortable and less congested sound. So as you can see here, now Abbey Road, probably that studio can take, it probably take about 110 without the chorus. But, I mean, somewhere between 80 and 90 is good. And this setup, which was a bit smaller than that, really sounded good in there. So that's one of the things I'd say, not to kind of overfill the room. The other thing, if you go to the next picture, yeah, that's me being overly obsessive about positioning, which is something those who know me would know that I do. And but it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And we setting up the night before as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, if it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, normally for a session of this size, I always allow about 6 hours set up. And you really want to do it the day before, because even if you set up right and your 6 hours come right up to the downbeat, it still doesn't allow a contingency for anything to go wrong. And that is one of the things that separates, big orchestral scoring to any other kind of recording there is actually zero tolerance for things to go wrong. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things is, especially, you know, on recordings that go this kind of fast, I mean, we say, you know, real men don't rehearse. And on something like this, with really top-rate orchestras, you don't rehearse anymore. Used to, but now, you know, you hire players who can sight read perfectly. These guys can, and a lot of times the session starts and you put the red light on right on 10 o'clock, no one rehearses. And, you know, Inon was just blown away at how well these guys can read.
Well, you know, I've been, you know, recording for a few years now, and everybody could really read. I mean, the good orchestras all over. One of the things that I've noticed with the London Sinfonia is the fact that they are playing together for many years, and they know each other. It's not a bunch of musicians that was put together. This is a real orchestra. So when they play, you feel not like, you know, a group of individual people play great together. You feel like one cohesive musical thing that is going on. They listen to each other. They're adjusting the pitch and the volume because they're used to do it all the time. And so the result is truly amazing. I mean, I was really blown away. And again, nothing against anybody else. And I've recorded in many places. I love all of that. But many other places, the musicians are at least as good. You know, the musicians in San Francisco, in LA, in Seattle, they're at least as good. I don't think that the London musicians are really better. The only fringe benefit there is this is an orchestra that travels around, they tour, they all the time together. It gives like some sort of an amazing quality.
I wouldn't say it's better, it's different. It's different.
Exactly.
It's different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here, next couple slides. We've kind of talked about the recording process, and you know, obviously, you know, the standard things. You know, once we come back to the USA, you know, Soft goes to work, starts editing, the mixing process starts. We start doing the soundtrack sequencing. We did a couple of unique things with music where we had collector's edition tracks of music that were just exclusively on the collector's edition, nowhere else. Same thing with doing some Target pre-orders. This was done through through marketing, so it's another, you know, opportunity to work together and help, you know, use the music and the uniqueness of that to help, you know, promote the product. Obviously, we went to mastered and then ship it. Right. So I don't know. Is this something for everyone?
I mean, but there is actually, you know, it is still a game, and we played you just a cinematic. So we'll play you now, actually, you know, a gameplay. We'll show you a little bit of the interactivity of the music. We used 3 variations, so right now variation 1 is playing. At this point, variation 2 came in, which is the same cue, but a little bit more active. See how the music will start. See? This is our sniper music. Every time you go to sniping, you get the sniper level. And this is like on the attack, view which is a building one, with the sniper level. And here comes the full-on, what we call variation C, because more people are coming. And you saw how seamless it's working between the layers. All live recorded in London, courtesy of the London Philharmonic. And variation B. Close. when you're really engaged with many enemies, but you see them all really close to you. By the way, this cue is only a minute and a half cue, and it already looped 3 times. Thanks.
Okay, so I think we're gonna, let's see here. I think I got, yeah, we're very close. We're actually, I think, right on time. So this is kind of a wrap slide here. Is this something for everyone? Large scale might not be in the budget, but these principles can be used and applied in, how you choose to apply these. Just having the mindset and the vision really helps in getting early composer. Build a great team. You just can't do this alone. Create some kind of, calculator that helps you, tune and tweak your numbers, and obviously alert marketing to any opportunities. And I think with that, we want to go into some questions, answers. I think we have about
10 minutes.
Like about 10, 11 minutes.
Yeah.
You see, when we were composing the soundtrack for the Lord of the Rings games, do you have some kind of inspiration or maybe some directions that somehow this music should resemble the movie soundtrack, which is because the movies are really popular and soundtrack to it is also popular, and the style of the game resembles the movie?
It's a very good question, and we were dealing with this a lot. It needed to sound like Middle-earth, okay? And so we had a lot of constraints. However, we, I think, developed a way that it will sound. One of the things is like one of the people that I played this music said, well, it sounds exactly like Lord of the Rings, but not the Lord of the Rings I know. So basically, we sort of I think, we're able to capture Middle-earth, but not what Shore did. Same orchestrations, or a lot, close orchestrations, but just different content in many ways.
And was it a problem for you? It was just a kind of that you should somehow rely on the things which already be done?
It's not a problem, it's a challenge.
Thank you very much.
My question is about... Oh, is this on?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
My question is about the interactivity system. When you're recording a full live orchestra, it's difficult to handle, like if a layered score, you have different layers of the orchestration come in based on intensity. Was that a problem that you handled at the editing stage after it was all recorded, or did you consider that while you were composing and doing the orchestration and the recording?
Again, great question. And this is what we talked about, preparation. And this all happens way, way before. The way we worked, we created one cue. I composed one cue, and this cue was orchestrated and played in 3 different intensities.
Sometimes 4.
And sometimes 4. Yeah, this one actually was 4. You saw when level D, when everybody jumped on it. Now, you could seamlessly transition. It's like shifting gears, okay? So you do it good, okay? But you shift between cues seamlessly, but you cannot do it by editing. You have to actually really compose it this way, so it will seamlessly be maneuverable and changeable and shiftable.
Great, thank you.
I write music for a British publisher, and during the signing many years ago, we had some legal issues. So I have an American attorney, but he couldn't read the British laws, so he had to decline it. Can you share your story with that?
Kim? well, I mean, we're not going to talk too much about it, but basically, I found out like a few days after the job had finished that it almost never took place. Basically, because of contractual things that Warner Brothers were insisting on, and London saying, "Well, we don't do things that way." And they say, "But you must, you must. It's law over." And they say, "Well, yeah, but it's not the law in England." So I think the way that we covered it was really that ultimately and it doesn't matter whether it's England or Europe or Russia or anywhere. It's a different country, different rules, and you need to find a common ground between what both sides need, and leave enough time to figure it out.
Right.
Because all these things always take much longer than you think.
Everything is. I mean, I got a great saying. It's like everything is negotiable, and everything for sale will have. Everything will sell at a certain price. But it's like you've got to leave the time for people to understand the contract and negotiate. It's like a dance.
You mean you left the country before they took it away from you?
Something like that.
Yeah. Or also, how many microphones did you have?
On this,
2.
I can look it up.
2.
2 ribbons.
And they were 57s.
It was actually 30 in all, of which probably about half of that gets used. Probably about 14 or 15, 16 mics get used, and then the others, are out all the time, and then they just come in, for a few seconds and then out again. They're not left in all the time. So I'd probably say actively probably about 14 or 15 mics.
That's why it's 6 hours. Okay.
Hello. Thank you very much for a good presentation. I have a question in 2 parts. They're financial questions. It sounds like you have a very good spreadsheet that helped you do cost estimation on the project. First part is I wonder if you guys would feel comfortable sharing with us some very high-level, non-specific numbers in terms of where you think the money went for the project. And second of all, I wonder if you could talk to us about where unforeseen costs came from on the project that you didn't foresee at the beginning.
Good question. Good question. I don't know how deep I can go into specific budget things. Obviously, it's I'm not
generic is fine.
Confidential kind of things. I would say the majority, if you had to carve things up into 100% percentile basis, I would have to say that the orchestra was probably in the 60 to 70% range, and then your studio fees come in, and that might be in the 15-ish% range. Engineering fees are included, and then, gosh, like travel. That travel's a thing that we didn't expect. There was also the choral part, and that was probably accounted for. I would say let's say 10%. 10%. As far as unforeseen fees, I would say the travel was an unforeseen fee because we at the time we didn't have our venue planned out, and once we went to Abbey, we was like, well, that's great. We have the budget to go, but I need a little bit more for the travel. I hope that's not going to be a problem, and of course it wasn't. So,
well, one thing that didn't happen to us but can happen is overtime, and you need to plan when you're doing a recording session that you will do at least 1 hour overtime. It's important because you're there and then you're not there. It's the one and only opportunity. So 1 overtime is not going to kill anybody, but it's going to be really essential to cover everything you wanted. And it's just like to come all the way there or anywhere and not recording all the material that you brought with you, it's just really wrong. So again, like I said, always build a cushion of at least 10 to 15% on your budget to cover that.
Over-prepare. Over-prepare. And it was really neat is we actually got done 15 minutes early both days.
What happens, I mean, when you're going that fast, it's almost like a roller coaster, and you say you're just rolling and rolling, and you're going so fast that you can't actually stop. And then you realize 15 minutes, before the 14th hour, we're finished.
Yeah.
And, so if anything, it's better to, overestimate than underestimate.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Excellent.
guys.
Thank you.
Got it. Bob?
Well, I just had a question about the music prep. You were saying you were carting all the parts to London. I was wondering, was there an option at Abbey Road, or was there a music prep service that you know of in London?
There is always an option. It's really expensive, though, if you want it to be done correctly. One of the most important thing is, since they read it the first time perfectly, they have to have like the best music sheet in front of them. It shouldn't be too small. It shouldn't be too large. It has to have exactly the amount of measures per stave that they're used to see. The size should be exactly the size that they used to see. It's all supposed to be 100% professional for them to do it. They will do it anyway, but why should we mount more problem on them? They have such a huge task in front of them. So I'd feel much better if I know that my orchestrator, who is really, avid, giving them exactly what they need. By the way, order, really important. We didn't talk about it. Do like a correct order of cues, so you don't give them like 4 or 5 cues in 160 BPM because they're just going to die there. Make sure that they have a little time to rest, and put a sheet with the order in front of every musician with numbers. Because if I call, guys, we're skipping to number 30, everybody, 30. That's how you move fast.
Okay, and if there's any last-minute changes for cues, like if you need to print off an alternate
Of
version
course,
or something.
there is always, and make sure that there is always handy a good and fast printer with you or in the studio. Do not, do it without it, because there is always something that needs to be printed.
I'd actually say that in addition to what Inon said, that if it's a score that looks in advance like it might need to be changed, on the podium, so to speak, you might be better to spend budget the money to have it copied in London, because then you're going to have a local copier there at the studio who can print out a replacement part. Whereas, what we did is we knew we're going to go with these parts, and if, God forbid, there was something wrong, we just have to move on and skip it. So I'd say use a local, copier, a music prep, if it's liable to be changed.
Right.
All right. Looks like we have time for...
Yeah.
One more. Hi, I'm Bob Rice. I'm Inon's parole officer.
Still, after all these years.
And I don't have a question, but I am such an advocate of professionalism in live music and, the contribution that music and sound make to games. I just wanted to say a couple of things that will enable anybody, hopefully enable all of us to get finance to make the appropriate contributions, and some things that might help you underscore your argument are, Steven Spielberg has noted many occasions, he says music and sound represent at least 50% of the entertainment value of all of my films. And I believe that holds true plus or minus 10% to games. And, we like to compare films to games and all that sort of stuff. Music for films can augment what you are seeing. Music for games augment what you are doing. Huge difference. My final line, I love this line for budget. I used to always have to fight for large budgets and all that sort of stuff. I love this one. Is the bitterness of poor quality lingers long after the sweetness of low cost. Tell that to your finance department.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Woo! Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks so much for staying so long, almost the end of GDC. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
But wait, there's more. I think we have.
And we do have actually a little surprise for you. Whoever is still here will get a free Lord of the Rings soundtrack. So please line up. And I will give it to you personally.